thank you for inviting me here, and
Keep that up there.
oh, sorry, I gotta keep it up there.
Yeah.
But what Pioneers reminds me of, a book we had to read in high school called All Pioneers by Willa Cather. And in those days, you actually had to read the book. I don't know what's going on now in high school. And one of the themes of the book was how land affects the people. Speaking of land affecting the people, in Nebraska in whatever was 1885, it still is affecting people nowadays, in Manhattan Beach in particular. Life takes us to places that we never expected to be at. I know, I'm going to mention a couple of dates now and see if anybody can figure out what I'm driving at. One is September 24, 1957, and the other date is October 4, 1957. Can anybody figure out what those dates mean? The second one, you should know. The first one, September 24, was the last game played at Ebbets Field. I just turned 12 years old. I was an avid Dodger fan, and they broke my heart when they moved out here. And since that time, well, I won't tell you how I feel about the Dodgers. And then the second date, October 4, was the launch of Sputnik 1. And I heard about Sputnik, and when I heard that, I was just starting junior high school in New York. We didn't have a middle school. It was set up a little bit differently. But I said, I want to be part of that. I want to be an engineer. I want to build rockets. I want to get into building airplanes. And I thought that was my future. And so when I went to high school and studied physics and chemistry, and I went to college and majored in engineering, went to NYU, got a master's, and came out here. And one of the things that prompted me to come out here was I was watching the Rose Bowl, I think it was, in '68. It was O.J. Simpson was playing for SC then, and it was about 75 degrees in New York. The snow was out there, and I said, what am I doing here? I'm getting out of here. So I worked for Lockheed for around 3 years or so, and in '71 things kind of went that way. The aerospace industry sort of died. And then I decided I needed to make a change. Maybe I didn't want to bounce around the country looking for a job. And my father said, why don't you become an accountant? At least you can get a job anywhere you want. And that's what I did. I went to UCLA Extension, took all their classes in their business school in accounting, got into awarded accounting, and took a bunch of tests. I took one for Manhattan Beach, and I took one for Glendale, and I also took an engineering training for the city of Los Angeles. And to my luck, it was in 1972 when I first got a phone call from Manhattan Beach, come on down for an interview. I interviewed for the job and didn't get it at the first crack, but there was some turnover, and then they called me up in around February of '73 and come on down again, and I got an offer, and my first job here as a junior accountant, $810 a month, which comes out to $4.67 an hour.
Oh my gosh.
But in those days, gas was 23 cents a gallon, a Big Mac was 39 cents. So to me, I thought it was so. It was pretty fantastic. I look at big events that occurred in my tenure here. I'm not telling anything new because everybody knows about what I'm going to be saying, but I like to just go over it, and maybe if there's any comments, please interrupt me and help me out if I'm making some errors or whatever. But when I came out here, I took a drive down to the beach. Sorry about that. Yeah, I took it. I wanted to see. I heard about the beaches and the Beach Boys and Surfing USA. So I drove down Wilshire all the way to Santa Monica, saw the Santa Monica Pier, and then I went on Lincoln, and Lincoln went into,
Where's-
no, went down to Sepulveda, and then, no, went down to,
Mr. Del Mar.
Marina Del Rey.
Vista Del Mar, no, okay, I gotta think about that for a second. And then, I go and I go, and all of a sudden, I hit Manhattan Beach, and I remember, it's kind of vague, I remember the old City Hall, it was still up there then in '68. And then, you parked the car for, I think it was 5 cents an hour on Highland someplace, and I kind of remember going down Manhattan Beach Boulevard towards the pier and looked at it, and then I came back, and then I went further down to Hermosa, turned back, but City Hall was unusual because they had a garden in front with flowers that spelled out Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in '71 was the Northridge earthquake, and City Hall was demolished, and so it was just an empty, almost like a sand. Well, no, the garden was kept, but all around it was just a sand pit. I don't remember what was on the area between City Hall and 13th. I think there was a tennis court there. I'm trying to remember. It's
You're right.
okay, but in no, Rob's going to know this one because finally in 1973, 74, the new City Hall was started, and it was finished in November of '75. Oh, let me say something. I got to go back a little bit. TRW was, we bought, the city bought a bunch of trailers from TRW, and that's where City Hall was, and it was on Valley for a couple of years, and so fortunately that was the City Hall for us for a couple of years. Then we built the new City Hall, which is now the old City Hall, and it was completed in November '75, like I said, and guess what the cost was in those days for new City Hall? $2.2 million. City Hall building cost is 2.2. County built the library next to us because the old library was where the post office is now, and so we had those. I think they were built by this architect, both the library and City Hall, so they would look similar. So the structures would kind of look the same. They kind of look like medieval castles or something like that to go down the alleyway between the library and City Hall. And moved in there in November of '75, and I worked there until the end of 2020. So I worked a couple of years in the trailers, and then the rest of the time was at the new City Hall building. Anybody have anything? Please, if you have any comments, just interrupt me. So I want to look at, so that probably was the first big event. I think the second big event was Prep 13, and that was in '75. And of course, property values were increasing in Manhattan Beach, and there was looking for some way to control how property taxes were levied. In those days, the city itself could set so many dollars per AV for this project, for police, so many dollars per AV for fire, so many for building. We didn't have community development in those days. It was all building. So when that passed, and with the 1%, it was very good for the homeowners, but there was a fundamental shift in the connection between the city and the state. And now the state was saying, this is how you're going to divide up the 1%. We're going to tell you how much goes to the county, how much goes to the schools, how much goes to you. So yes, on the plus side, we saved a lot of people's homes. On the other side, that the state started to mandate, I wouldn't use the word mandate, or control the way the property taxes would be collected and spent, how they would change. And the formulas that they have, back in 78, 79, there were some Senate bills and Assembly bills, AB 8, and those are still in effect. They determine how they're gonna spread the money out between the schools, the cities, the county, special districts, still the same way. We have no control over how the property tax is collected or given to us. And that was a loss. Go ahead.
Could you explain precisely or more precisely just what your job entailed?
Well, I was an accountant, and so,
Which means you did what?
well,
Kept track of the money.
well, you have to, well, you have,
Main
okay.
accountant and you work with
Right.
other accountants?
Well, revenues are coming in. Well, obviously people were buying building permits and they would sign up for classes in recreation. Money comes in, you have to account for it. So you have to keep a set of books. So you have revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. You had a balance sheet. You have disbursements, you have checks. You have to create a set of financial statements for the public. So you have a nice book that has an intro from the finance director that's saying, here's the books for 1974-75, and we made an addition to the pier, we did this, we did that. So I was what you call more than a bookkeeper, but yes.
How did your job differ from, say, the city treasurer?
Well, the city treasurer is, how shall I put it? It did not. The city treasurer does not get involved with the everyday workings of finance. The city treasurer now, we work with them to maintain our investment portfolio. We make decisions on the length of an investment and what kind of interest that we're trying to pick up. But the treasurer is more of an approver as opposed to an everyday person that comes in and does work. I mean, accounting is not, it's hard to tell good stories about accounting. It's not like somebody building buildings or somebody, doing something that's create something. But at least I can kind of chronicle what happened during my time there, and I'm sure that you'll chime in. I think the next big thing after
Henry,
go ahead.
about Prop 13, what was it about Prop 13 that gave the state control?
When Prop 13 passed, it said 1% of the assessed valuation shall be levied against the property. So individually, the schools or the county or special district or city cannot say, we're going to levy a certain rate against the AV. Say that this is going to be frozen now, and whatever it was in 1977, these are the proportions that we're going to allocate to you. Of course, they tweaked it a little bit, but from then on, we have no say in how property tax comes to us.
Well, before Prop 13, did the county have control of the money?
No, we had control.
We did.
We would say so many dimes per AV to do storm drains, so many dimes per AV to do police and fire and that kind of thing. So we could determine how much money that we wanted or needed to get the job done. After Prop 13, we just take what we get.
What is AV?
Hmm?
What is AV?
Assessed valuation.
Thank you.
So it turns out that after all is said and done, we get about 14.7% of the property tax now. It can go up and down, but it's just about that. And that's the way it's been since 1978, 40 years plus. And always there's been a tension between cities and state. I can remember going to a meeting in Sacramento once, and I think it was with the League of California Cities, and somebody got up there and said something, and somebody else didn't like it. There was almost a fist fight between these two guys, between the state representative and somebody from the city. It's just the way it was in those days, and it still is that way now. there is this and somebody mentioned the Hill Rose, same thing. But I can get that, I'll get to that in just a bit. So in about 1981, the land between the old Chevron tank farm, which was between, I guess, Sepulveda and Marine and Rosecrans, and well, there was a large piece on aviation that was still owned by TRW, which is now Northrop Grumman. It was developed, we know now, into the mall and into the hotel and into the tennis club. And we own the land beneath the hotel. We own the land beneath the golf course. We own where the tennis club is. That's a lot of land. And soccer field. And so now you have the mall, you have the Chevron home. I still call it the Chevron homes. And now Marine Avenue Park was still owned by TRW. What is now Marine Avenue Park was still owned by TRW until a little bit later. But I can remember going out to the sandbox there where the mall is now, and trying to find out where we're going to put the water meters. And we're a little bit with public works. So besides being an accountant, I got out there with some old shoes and found those meters. Wow. Then in the 1990s, we did purchase from TRW that corner there where the park is. So it's Marine Avenue Park there. I call it, I guess they have a, I think there's another soccer field there, and then they have the softball field, and then there's Adventureplex. I think that's what they're now.
Yes, yes.
So all that came to us, and that occurred, I think it was early 90s. If anybody knows better than I, just chime in. And then going on into the 2000s now, and I'm not going to go into Y2K because that's too boring, but maybe I will later on, because City Hall campus was radically changed in 2004. We got a new police station, well, it's a police fire facility that all came about. The old police station were demolished. We built underground parking underneath the area between City Hall and the library and the police fire. We also opened 13th Street, so Crest and now Valley Drive were connected. And then about that time, we also bought the land, which is now Metlock's. So we own that land, that's Metlock's now. And Metlock's was developed just about that time too. The mall there, or the mini mall I might call it, and the parking structure that was built on that, just on Crest there, Crest, right? Yeah. That is Crest. No, not that Crest. What's that street between?
Yeah, morning.
Morningside. Sorry, yeah, the Morningside. So I take that back. So it was Morningside, and between Morningside and Valley Drive, and that was a large undertaking at that time.
Do those kind of things generate revenue eventually? I mean, do you pay for it and then the city starts making money off of those places?
Well, we bonded some of it. Well, we bonded part of it. We bonded the cost of the parking structure. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, there were 30-year, 20-year bonds. Yeah. For me personally, one big thing happened in, I guess it was 2012. I made a little sojourn to the top of the City Hall roof. And the reason why I did that is that Endeavor, everybody at Endeavor, the shuttle, was flying in on top of a Boeing 747. And at that time they announced when they're going to be flying around the airport. So I made a couple of passes. I don't know whether it was legal what I did going up on the roof, but I was on the roof there watching that plane circle all around, and it's 10 years now that Endeavor came here.
Yeah.
Amazing, time flies.
That was
So it's the Endeavor, yeah.
that was also Manhattan Beach Centennial, the year. of-
Yeah, right. I was gonna mention that because 2012, they invited me to a ride on some, I think it was the back of some kind of fire, not truck, but one of the vehicles, and they had a parade up in Manhattan Beach Boulevard, and they made me wave and so.
They made you wave.
I'd also like to add, that was also my wife and my 50th anniversary.
And then in 2000, I guess it was 2013 or so, the old library, well, the first version of the county library was demolished. And then the new library, which is a state of the art, was opened up in 2015. To check that out, just about that time.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah. The old library was not designed properly. That's all. It just ran out of room, and the new one is fantastic. I could talk about a little bit about our computer system. Somebody was asking me about what I was doing there when I was an accountant. There was a point at a time when I was able to use my knowledge of computer languages to do a little bit of work. I enhanced some of the systems that we got. And I said that was my fun time was between 85 and 95 when I kind of sort of ran the books as an accountant, yes, but also as a programmer. Maybe that wasn't the best thing. We had reels of tape that we did backups, half-inch tape, one of the big reels. And the fire department was very nice to me. They used to come in because when we had 4 or 5 reels of tape to do the backup, they would come at 12 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning and help me out, and mounting a new reel of tape. But that was the old days. Somebody you mentioned the high roads, and it's kind of interesting because when we look back, it's just been 10 years since the Great Recession, and one of the things that was involved there was the effort of the feds to say everybody should have a single-family home. We want to do everything to promote that, and so you had subprime mortgages out there, and well, I don't know all the economics of the situation, but it imploded. So the effort to enhance the ability of people to get mortgages with a little bit of this and that, and you had Fannie Mae and all that kind of thing, was a failure. Now we turn around 10 years later, we want more density. So on the one hand, the state says we need more density. On the other hand, 10 years ago, the Fed said, let's help people get a single-family home. Now, there's one thing I have to say, that the more you get government controlling the way you do things, whether it be Washington or Sacramento, it sort of divests the citizens from feeling like it's part of what's going on to control his or her life. And local control is something that's going to have to be resolved in some manner. The way things are going now, I think it's even beyond the hill roads. The state, I think, Senate Bill 35 or 37 said it's not. You have to still do more density. I think they wanted another 500 units in Manhattan Beach by some year. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
The character of Manhattan Beach is going to change, but everything changes. Everything changes. If you look back 50 years ago, look at Manhattan Beach, and look at it now. Some things we controlled, but when an outside agency says, thou shalt do this, then you have a bureaucracy gets built up. And whom do you call to get help? Whom do you call to get an assistance with something? So, no, all I can say, I can end this by saying there was go ahead.
I just have a question about the people aspect of your job. I wondered in 1973 if people used to go into City Hall to pay their water bills and for their animal licenses and things like that. So I think a lot is done online. But tell me about the people that used to come into City Hall. How many came in to hug you, and how many came in to want to smack you?
Well, there was, at that time, there was, well, I don't know, he still may be around. There was one particular person who always wanted to give us a difficult time, but I won't go into that. But, you know, something I can say, I didn't really do much counter work. So I was the green eye shade guy. When I did go out there, I can tell you, probably the most famous person I've ever saw there was Tony Dow from Leave It to Beaver. That's about the most famous person I've seen. Later on, I did bump into Steve Nash. I think he ran some programs for recreation here before he became a coach. Now he's fired, he's probably coming back here. And Paul Westphal, that name ring a bell? He was a great player. He passed away just a couple of years ago. But I remember seeing him play at SC. And we know his career. So that's about the most famous person that I've seen that I can say.
I got a question for you, Henry. So all the money was coming through your books.
Yeah.
Tell me about one of the most outrageous or craziest stories of something coming through your books during your tenure.
You know, people say, "Well, that's a good question," and what they're really saying, is, "Hell, I don't know how to answer that question." I can't think of anything. I cannot think of anything.
You never went and yelled at the mayor or the city manager saying, "What the heck is this?"
No. Oh, we've had great councils, and actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass around my farewell speech that I gave back in December of 2020, and that might fill in some holes here. But the Green Eyeshade people are nothing spectacular. I mean, you speak to somebody in recreation. We had Charlie Sakely. I have to mention him in the volleyball. He made Manhattan Beach the Wimbledon of volleyball. Jan Dennis, who has chronicled the history of Manhattan Beach, wrote 9 books going on 10. Can't forget about her. As far as me getting involved, no, it's other people who got involved and made things happen.
All right, how about a crazy story about the behaviors or some crazy thing that happened that they did that you were just watching?
Well, nowadays you gotta be careful what you say.
Of course. It's not being recorded.
Camera and everything.
When there are certain, I think I was well behaved, that's all I can say.
You kept your job a long time.
I didn't want to do anything that might jeopardize my job here. But no, I just wanted to end this kind of saying, and I wanted to follow up on the Hill Roads, because there was a Frenchman named the name was de Tocqueville. He came here in 1831, and he looked at this country, how it was growing, and he said, "Everything looks great here, but beware of bureaucracy and how it can grow." And bureaucracy, federal, state, tends to inhibit the citizen from exercising their full, I wouldn't say rights, but involvement with government. If you have a problem here now, you go to City Hall and you make a complaint, and everybody will listen to you there. But who are you going to complain to with a ruling from Washington? Who are you going to complain to because the state says